Paul, it's good to see you again.
It's good to see you too, Christopher.
How you doing, man?
Good. I'm ready to kick off the Paul and Saul show this week.
Let's do Paul and Saul. So,
Let's do it.
a couple things on our list for today, talking about a school's test scores story. Wow. School test score story that I put together over the last 8 months.
Yeah.
I don't want to brag, but I did some data.
Some data-driven reporting.
It was fun. It was a good time, and I'm also glad it's over. We're going to also talk about the 1-year anniversary of the death of Mike Ledford, where that case is, where the trial's going with the accused murderer, Dylan Deschaine. We're going to talk about lead in the water in Valparaiso. Wish I was kidding, but I have a document to back it up. And finally, we're going to wrap it all up with man's best friend, Paws. The contract is not, I guess, the city of Niceville's best friend.
Pause.
But yeah.
Paws got paws.
You're a dog. You're a dog for that. See, I can do the double entendre. Anyway, we're going to get in there. And then, as always, we want to hear from you. Give us your thoughts, your shout-outs, your critiques, and your undying praise for me specifically, but also Paul. But do you want to get started?
Well, we forgot to mention where we're sitting.
Oh, yeah. We're sorry. Forgot to do that. We need to shout out to our sponsors, your sponsor and mine, Paul.
I know.
Movement Mortgage for the Movement Mortgage Studios, brought to you by Steve Shutt, Movement Mortgage Loan Officer. And so...
we're sitting in his office.
Well, we're not in his office.
Well, sort.
We're in his building. Like his office.
We're in his building.
Hall.
Yeah. If he was here, we could see him.
We could see him. He would come in
and say hi to us.
Kind of like the Kool-Aid man. He'd come through that wall. Anyway, first things first, school test scores.
You spent a lot of time on that article.
I started this story in June 2024.
Can I make the joke about how the Wawa article is blowing it out of the water? I dropped the fourth wall for a second.
I don't lose a whole lot of faith in humanity a whole lot of times. But ladies and gentlemen, the Wawa that is coming to Town got something like 200,000 hits.
So funny.
And
so funny.
This story, which
did not. We don't have to tell them how many it got, but it did not get 200,000.
It didn't. But it's important. Here's why.
Oh, my God.
Walton County School District.
Yeah.
Next door to the east of Okaloosa County is the number 2 school district, or number 4. It's in top 2 to 4, 2 to 5 in the last couple of years. And they've done really well because they used to be 31st, and one superintendent kind of took them from kind of the back of the pack, really, if you look at all the data, up to the front. And there's 2 big data points that I looked at in this story that I think are really important that people kind of go, oh, duh, but like, not really. We don't pay teachers anywhere close to what they get paid in Walton County. It starts out as a $5,000 differential on a $49,000.
Getting bigger.
10% pay differential, and it keeps getting bigger as these teachers progress in their careers. And so we're seeing a lot of teachers go over to Walton County, first of all, because northern Walton County is pretty affordable to live in relative to places like Niceville or Destin or anything like that. And so they're able to make more money, and they're also able to live less expensively. And so what I look at in this, and we talked about it, you come into this story a little bit, is the fact that we're not really doing a whole lot in terms of affordable housing or in teacher pay. That's something that gets decided for the most part at the Okaloosa County School District. The pay stuff does. And then we're building a lot of single family homes instead of, starter homes, as it were, townhomes, apartments, stuff like that.
Well, I think what was great about the story too is you proved out one of my thesis is that guys like Charlie Morello at Niceville are frustrated because they can spend a lot of time recruiting really good talent, only for that talent to then look at the cost of living and go, I can't take the job. I really would love to, Mr. Morello, but I can't take the job. And so, I think if we had some smaller square footage places and we had the ability to spread sort of the entire supply across different types of real estate, like, we would be in much better shape. And I think you're right. I think if you can earn more and your money goes further, then why wouldn't you want to teach in that county, just one county away?
And I think even in like little things that maybe are like silly in the grand scheme of things, like sports teams, right? If I am a high school science teacher and I played Division I pickleball, I don't know, lacrosse, whatever, and you said to me like, hey, come to Niceville where there's a really good lacrosse program, right? And coach here, I would look at that and say, well, I'm going to make $49,000 a year. Might make a couple $1,000s more on top of that as like the incentive pay.
Right.
But that's not enough for me to live. And if you're making $60,000 a year and you're by yourself, what is that, like probably $15,000, $20,000 you have a year at most for housing?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that doesn't go very far here.
No, not at all.
And that means your teams are going to suffer in the long term as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I would like to see happen is for us to go after younger teachers, but make sure that we have housing available for them.
So ultimately, what is the solution that could be presented at scale in your mind as a developer to bring in, let's say, 500 middle tier, $1,100 to $1,500 a month housing units?
Well, I think that, the military would have to give up land, and some of the other big up landowners would have to give it up as well. But, it's really, really hard to build middle housing when land is expensive. And so I think we have to take an approach as a city that's multifaceted, and do a lot of infill projects of existing dilapidated lots. And I'd like us to do more ADUs, accessory dwelling units. So that's putting a 1-bedroom, 1-bath little house in people's backyards for like in-law suite or an additional rental income. And so I'd like us to do more of that as well.
Do you see, well, I guess I should not phrase this as a question to you, but more as a statement from me and then kind of get your feedback on it, is that I see a problem not only with like the pay for teachers, but a lot of these buildings are very old too, right?
Sure.
I am not so sure that there isn't a problem with the way that we are financing, even on a general revenue basis, so like taxes and other things to bring money in to pay for these schools, right? Because if our teachers are getting paid less and the buildings are not high quality, or at least moderate quality, were built after 1970, I think it's a hard sell to get people to come from the Teachers College in Tallahassee or UWF or Florida to come and teach, right? When they can go to all these places where they're going to get paid more, right? And they're going to have nicer facilities.
Yeah, brand new schools definitely go a long way. I mean, teachers love working at new schools. There's no doubt about that. But I hope over time Okaloosa County continues to upgrade their facilities, and Niceville High School hopefully starts looking better. Maybe there's more community support that could be had during the summer times as well to help spruce the place up a bit.
Yeah. And this is not me trying to knock on the school district for not building stuff in total. I think ultimately it comes down to the taxpayers themselves to make the decision, right? Because
absolutely,
we voted for this half-cent sales tax almost 8-9 years ago at this point, and we have been building new buildings, right? But it sometimes feels like they're using the money as efficiently as possible, but there's just not a big enough pot.
Right. Yeah.
Just some thoughts to think about. If you guys disagree with us vehemently, put it in the comments. We want to hear about it. If you agree, we'd also like to hear that, because I like to be told I'm right every once in a while.
Yeah, maybe you don't like Christopher's story at all, and you have a different reason for why test scores have slipped a bit.
I would say that's the last thing we've also noticed, is that in the last 20 years, we had 3/4 of our kids passing the state test in 2004. And in that same year, the graduation rate was about 84%.
Mm-hmm.
In the last testing period that data was available when I wrote this story, 23-24, school year 23-24, we had 64, I think was the number, percent of students across, our schools got the 64 percentile, right? Mm-hmm. So it went down, but at the same time, our graduation rate went up. And so that's another thing I'm kind of looking at, like, so
that's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting.
Anyway, lots of stuff to talk about in that. We can get back to it. Put your questions, comments, concerns in there. But let's move on to kind of a sad anniversary.
Third Planet had their bonfire Friday night, so that event is always going to have sort of this twinge of sadness and nostalgia tacked onto it.
Yeah. So Mike Ledford, Sushi Mike, as it were, the owner of what is now Post 20, that restaurant there, on Bayshore, kind of in that downtown area. He had that food truck. He was killed in the parking lot, the CVS Oak Creek Shopping Center parking lot, on the 10th or 11th of last year. And so, this whole thing is played out. There was an arrest, a young man named Dylan Deschaine, 25, 26 years old.
Isn't it crazy? He's been in jail for a full year.
He's been in jail for a full year. And in that year, we've gotten to see more and more about what happened. Of course, we have all that stuff on our website, midbaynews.com, where we've covered, 10, 15 stories about this. But the latest thing that's come out as we're watching this is the security video from outside of all of these businesses where Ledford was killed. And it looks like there was an altercation inside of the Paradise Liquors. And then Ledford came back, and it looks like he got embroiled in some sort of fight.
Yeah. And Dylan may have stood his ground, which is legal in Florida to protect yourself. So it's going to be super interesting. I think we have an update for what's coming later.
Yeah. So this Thursday, there is a motion hearing on the books for Mr. Deschaine. His attorney put it on there. And if my information is correct, they're going to do a stand your ground hearing. I'll just take a point of personal liberty and say, like, watching this video, when somebody gets back out of the car and attacks, it looks like a stand your ground. It makes a lot of sense for Dylan Deschaine. It doesn't mean that, and that's the thing I try to, like, as I'm talking with family members about this and stuff like that, doesn't mean that I think like Mike is a bad guy. I think that if what I see is the case, like, he made a bad decision. Right?
Yeah. And I think it's, I mean, for Dylan to be in jail for an entire year, you basically got access to this video 2 months ago.
Yeah. And they've had it.
You would think maybe there's more to the story to keep this man in jail for a full year besides the stand your ground stuff. But I don't know. Maybe there's more.
And you can, by the way, watch all of these videos. We have them on our website.
Sure. But you would just think, like, if they've had that video for a long time and they believed it was a stand your ground, like it was like a clear cut stand your ground type of situation, why has he been in jail for so long?
And that's the thing I can't parse, right? Because they had initially put a stand your ground motion in front of the judge when it was Judge Ketchel. And then they withdrew that motion. And then I believe the judge's rotations all rotated.
Mm-hmm.
And so now they have a new judge. And my only guess is that they knew that this rotation was coming up. And so for one reason or another, Deschaine's attorney, who's a court-appointed attorney, he's not a public defender. There's a thing where private attorneys can kind of bid to, like, take on cases. And so Michael Weinstock, who's a Niceville area attorney, took that case, and he wasn't the first defense attorney, but it looks like he took that one over kind of in the late summer. It's the first time I kind of saw him on TV or on the video. But all this to say that we're not sure why this motion hasn't been put on the floor yet, but it hasn't. And so I am very interested, and I will be at that hearing on Thursday in Fort Walton Beach at 9 a.m.
Well, you won't have to wait very long. By the time this podcast comes out, it'll only be a day or two, and we'll have an updated story for you.
So yeah, we'll have more information on that. The next thing is kind of another kind of negative, unfortunately.
I feel like we've been really hammering Valparaiso lately.
I'm not trying to, but stuff keeps getting dropped in my lap. So I am a member of the Heritage Museum's Board of Trustees, and we got a piece of paper from the city of Valparaiso that was disseminated at our last board meeting, and it says it's a notice of unknown service line material, and it says it's from the city of Valparaiso. I'm going to ask and verify this document at the city of Valparaiso City Commission meeting tonight, but this is what it says, and our manager of the museum said this is a legit document. Trust Arthur. So says the city of Valparaiso Water Works is working to identify service line materials throughout the water system and has determined that the water pipe, called the service line, that connects your home or building to the water main is made from unknown material, but may be lead. Because your service line material is unknown, there is the potential that some or all of the service lines could be made of lead or galvanized pipe that was previously connected to lead. People living in homes with a lead or galvanized pipe previously connected to a lead service line have an increased risk of exposure from lead from their drinking water. And so this is just another kind of stomach punch for the city of Valparaiso, which is out of cash, is having to raise its taxes. It raised its taxes again this past year. For reference, they've almost doubled the rate at which property is taxed since 2000. And so when it rains, it pours, man.
I'd be super interested when you go there to find out how much the cost of testing is. My knowledge is very minimal, but like, I know like lead-based paint used to be an issue in people's homes that were built before 1978. And I know like the cost of like doing that testing is like pretty cost prohibitive. So I would be curious, is it a simple water test, or do they got to scratch the inside of the pipe, or what is the...
How do you shut down the pipe for a week, a day?
Yeah, like how do you test for that? Regardless, that's like not the best, letter to be receiving in the mail. And I'm sure it's got a lot of folks concerned.
Talking with a lot of people with a lot more expertise and visibility on these kinds of situations than me that work here locally, they tell me this is a big issue for the city of Valparaiso, especially for what I wrote in my master's thesis about putting together a merger, because the city of Valparaiso's infrastructure, whether that be its streets, but mostly its underground pipes, are so old that to take in Valparaiso in a merger would be cost prohibitive for the city of Niceville to do because of stuff like this.
You're accepting just so much risk.
And so it's one of those things where my concern is that, we go down the road 5 or 10 years and the city of Valparaiso, frankly, runs out of money and they unincorporate and everybody says, well, what do we do now? Where are we supposed to get our services? I'm used to having police, I'm used to having trash picked up twice a week. I'm used to these parks being maintained. What happens?
I guess you slip back to the county.
So you do slip back to the county, but what does that quality of life difference look like for those people that have grown accustomed to this for the last 105 years?
Yeah, I mean, we've been blowing this whistle pretty hard for the last month or for the last year or so. So
it's not going to be good.
Yeah.
Finally, a pause on Paws, and
a pause on Paws.
You put this on the list, so you get to lead this one, brother.
Well, I mean, it just continues to be something that plays out in the Facebook world about the city pausing or not signing their contract with Paws to pick up animals and do animal control. And so I think there's a small but angry group. I think, this is my opinion, that the professionalism and business acumen of Paws leadership was lacking. Otherwise, they probably could have saved this. But I don't know. There isn't really, and this is where the Paws people may have like a legit comment to be made, is there hasn't been a publicized plan from the city on really how they're going to handle this. So we're sort of like in a middle area of unknown, at least publicly.
It's like a weird holding pattern, but in turbulence.
Yeah, and I mean, the animal lovers will say, like, we can't have any Paws in service, because the animals. But other people might say, like, okay, we'll be fine for a little while.
Yeah. So, I mean, people are either really, really fired up about this, or they are, I don't want to say indifferent, but it is.
I think there's
on the totem.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are indifferent, but there's an angry few.
Yeah. So
social media.
We'll be keeping an eye on that. I won't tell you whether or not I'm in either a group or somewhere in the middle, but it is going to be interesting because people, just from back in my TV days, right? You could run a story about a murder that happened, and then you could run a story about an animal cruelty thing that happened. And I know I can hammer which button gets more clicks. It's the animals.
Yeah, I mean, you could write a very large investigative piece on schools and scores and how they decreased, and then you could write a piece about how a Wawa's getting built, and we know which one will get thousands of more views. I love you, man.
Yeah, something like that could happen.
Yeah, something like that could happen.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for the Paul and Saul show. Be nice, Niceville.
You heard the man.
See ya.